Hey guys. So I think peppers are probably the second most popular thing we grow in our vegetable gardens. What do you think? First being tomatoes, of course. I've got my pepper seedlings here and they are ready to go in the ground. And that got me to thinking that plenty of you maybe either have had problems with peppers over the last few years, or maybe this is your first time having a garden or your first time growing peppers in the garden. So I'm gonna go over 10 mistakes that you might make when growing peppers. And if you can get this whole list, then you don't have to make these mistakes and you're gonna have an amazing pepper harvest this year. Now, if I miss anything in this video, or if you just want more information, check out our free garden guide. It's online and it's gonna tell you everything you need to know, and it's all area specific, meaning it's made just for you where you are. You just enter your location and it knows your climate, and it's gonna tell you exactly how to grow all the things you wanna grow. It'll even give you personalized notifications on watering, planting, fertilizing, harvesting. It's basically like having me in your back pocket. I'll leave a link to that down below. All right, so I'm gonna sit here in the shade because it's kind of hot right now, and we're just gonna have a discussion on these 10 mistakes that you could make growing peppers. Now, if you've made any of these mistakes, let me know down in the video description. I've made most of them over the last 30 years. Now, the first mistake I've made plenty of times, because you get really excited in the springtime and you really want to plant in your garden. The problem is peppers don't like to be rushed. You can put out tomatoes, you can put out eggplant, you could put out even basil, and they'll limp along, and then when the heat kind of picks up, they'll start to really grow. Peppers are different. They will limp along. The problem is they may not ever start to grow quickly. It seems that if peppers are put out when the temperatures are too low at night, they'll limp along all right, but they also may have their growth stunted permanently. So if you started your peppers indoors from seed, or if you're getting garden center transplants, you want to make sure that your nighttime temperatures are in the mid 50s or above before putting them out in the garden. That's going to make sure that the soil temperature and the air temperature is optimal for them to just kind of pick up and start growing immediately. If you started them indoors too soon and they're outgrowing whatever seed module or tray or pot you put them in, it's much better to pot them up into the next size up container rather than putting them out too early. Okay, the second mistake that you might make, now that we know the temperatures are supposed to be before you put them out, the next mistake is not giving them enough sunlight or giving them too much. Peppers love warm weather and they love the sun. They need about 6 to 8 hours of sun per day. The further south you go, the less they need, and they really want to have morning, midday sun. That afternoon sun gets really hot and it comes in there and it can ruin your fruit. So if you live in a northern climate, you probably aren't going to have a bunch of problem with that. But this is one of my biggest problems growing peppers, and that is sun scald. In fact, I've gotten it every year at some point or another. But first, if you have too little sun, if you put them in too much shade, you're going to have a lack of production and it's going to take forever for them to ripen. So if you are in a northern climate, you may not even get a harvest of ripe peppers this year. Now, I probably should tell you what sun scald is if you haven't had it before. It starts off as a spot on the pepper that looks wrinkly, like it's getting old, just in a spot. It doesn't match the rest of the pepper, like the backside, shady side of the pepper. If the problem isn't fixed, then it's going to turn brown and dry, and that part of the pepper will no longer be edible. Well, it might be edible, but it would be really gross. But you can cut that part away and eat the rest of the pepper. So over the years, I've tried different things. I've planted the peppers a little more thickly. I've planted on the afternoon sun side, I've planted larger plants that could shade them. And that did help, especially last year. I had the least amount of sun scald I've had. I had corn in the next bed over, and that shielded them from the hot afternoon sun. But even the midday sun here can get strong. So this year, I'm doing something completely different. I'm actually starting from the very beginning by attaching the little clips that you put pipes in. Like if you're running a pipe on a wall, you could screw these into the wall. And I put several on either side of the bed. And then I take some PVC pipe and run it from one, bend it over to the other side to make arches all the way down the bed. And then I got some 40% shade cloth and some PVC clips. And so what I did was I made sure that the top and the sunset afternoon sun side is shaded. So they get full morning sun, and then for the rest of the day, they're getting kind of a 40% shade dappled sunlight effect. Now these, what do they call it, pipe straps? This and the PVC will actually do double duty for you, or triple duty actually. If you're growing things in that bed that have to be protected from birds, you could put netting over those arches. If you want to extend your season into the late fall or winter, or maybe plant sooner next year in the spring, you can put plastic or fleece or floating row covers and clip those onto the arches. So it actually can serve you all year long, not just shade cloth for the peppers. So now that it's warm enough to put them outside and we've got the afternoon sun taken care of, now we have to figure out how far apart to space your peppers. Now the optimal spacing is about 18 inches. Peppers are hungry plants and they don't want to be infringed upon by other plants growing in their space. So the more plants you've got right around them, the more nutrients are taken out of the soil, the more you're going to have to replenish it with fertilizer. So keep all other plants 18 inches away. Although there is a caveat here. Peppers actually enjoy growing in pairs. And when I say in pairs, I mean really close together. And when I say really close together, I'm talking about if you sowed 2 seeds in one module and they both came up and they're literally growing out of the same spot, that's okay. Or if they're a couple of inches apart, that's okay too. Peppers seem to have an advantage growing that way. They shade each other's fruit because there's more leaves in that one spot. They hold each other up because peppers tend to get top heavy. So it's okay to grow 2 right close to each other. But then if you're going to plant another pair of them, give them the 18 inches that they want. Now, if you're looking to save seeds from these peppers to grow next year, spacing becomes a little more important because peppers can cross-pollinate. And if you've got a hot pepper next to a sweet pepper, they can cross-pollinate, and next year's sweet pepper that you think you're planting may be spicy. Now, there's a myth out there that, it's kind of a myth, that if you plant a sweet pepper and a hot pepper next to each other, then this year's fruit is going to be mixed in with that, and so your sweet pepper will be hot, or your sweet pepper will dilute the heat of your hot pepper. That's not really the case in terms of the flesh of the pepper. This year's peppers, the heat of the flesh is 100% dependent on the mother's DNA. And that DNA cannot be changed this season in the flesh. Now, when you insert the father's DNA into the ovary of the plant, that changes things for the seed, which changes things for next year's flesh. Now, why do I keep saying flesh? I think this is how the myth got started, because people eat the sweet pepper that was growing too close to the hot pepper, and they'll get some heat, maybe a lot of heat. But that heat doesn't come from the flesh. That heat comes from the seeds if they happen to eat those. Because the father's DNA, while it's not in the flesh, it is in the seeds for next year's plant. So it's kind of like growing corn. If you grow starchy corn next to sweet corn, it will affect that year's crop because you're eating the seeds of the corn. I hope that makes sense. But I think that's how that myth got started. But in terms of flesh, it's not going to change it for this year. Now, if you really don't want to change it for next year either, you got to grow peppers, studies say, 400 feet apart to keep them from cross-pollinating, or you need to hand-pollinate and then protect the flower with some kind of a net bag or paper bag to keep those seeds pure for next year. Anyway, that's going beyond the scope of this video. Okay, the next mistake, I think we're on number 4 now, is improper watering. Now, peppers are related to tomatoes. They're both in the nightshade family, and they both can suffer from the wrong watering practices. First of all, you want to water from below, just like with tomatoes. You don't want to get water on the leaves if at all possible. Now, I get it. You don't have to put in the comments, what about rain? There's nothing we can do about rain except grow everything in greenhouses. I don't have a greenhouse. If you do, great, grow them in there. But I can't do that, and most people can't. So just don't add any additional water with the hose, especially when you're spraying from the hose and it's hitting the ground, bouncing up on the leaves. It's bringing the spores and bacteria out of the soil onto the plant that way. Now, you can keep the rain from doing that by putting a nice 2 to 3 inch layer of mulch over the soil, so it's a physical barrier between the soil pathogens and the plant leaves. Mulch is also going to conserve water in the soil, so you have to water less. Another watering issue that peppers get, just like tomatoes, is blossom end rot. And that's when this happens. Basically, the bottom end of the pepper turns brown, then black, looks rotted. Now, just like with sun scald, you can cut this away, even though it looks very unappetizing, and you can still eat the rest of the pepper. It's a lack of calcium. The plant needs water to pull calcium out of the soil and into the plant and into the fruit. It needs a consistent supply of water. So if your plant is always going dry, it's going to run out of calcium. So water consistently, you won't have that problem. If you have the problem after watering inconsistently, you don't have to buy any potions or anything like that. Just start watering regularly again, and the problem will fix itself. Not on the fruit that's already damaged, but on the fruit that still is to come. Speaking of potions, the 5th mistake is improper fertilization. Using the wrong fertilizer. Now, I'm not talking about using the wrong brand of fertilizer. I'm talking about, well, first of all, too much nitrogen. It doesn't take much nitrogen at all for peppers to overdose on it. And so you want to keep the nitrogen levels low. Too much nitrogen is going to make plants explode in leafy growth and get top heavy and put more energy into leaves and stems than into the fruit that you want. So at planting time, as with almost everything, I use Neptune's Harvest crab and lobster and Neptune's Harvest kelp meal. Any well-balanced organic fertilizer is going to be great. Where you really get into problems is when you get into synthetic fertilizers, because they have such high nitrogen levels and it causes a real imbalance in the soil. A few weeks after planting, I start to use a liquid fertilizer, organic, low nitrogen, high phosphorus, which is the middle number on the fertilizers. The first number is nitrogen, the second number is phosphorus, the third number is potassium. So I use Neptune's Harvest tomato and veg formula. It's a 2-4-2. So you got low nitrogen, higher phosphorus. That's what you want. And that's what I feed my whole garden with all summer long, every 2 to 3 weeks. All right, the 6th mistake has to do with pruning. Now, pruning is a controversial issue when it comes to growing peppers. And I fall somewhere in the middle. I think if you have a long growing season like I do here in 9B, 10A, San Diego area, then it's a mistake if you don't prune your peppers. Basic pruning means you're just taking, when the pepper is about 6 to 8 inches tall, you're pinching out that center growth so that it starts to put out branches. Because the more branches you have, the more flowers you have, and the more flowers you have, the more fruit you have. So to me, it's a no-brainer in a long growing season to prune your peppers. Now, if you live in a short growing season, maybe zone 6 or below, it would probably be a mistake to prune your peppers. Because pruning them, while you do get a lot more branching, it prolongs the harvest by 3 or more weeks. And so if you're already crunched for time and getting that first flush of peppers to ripen by the time your first frost gets here, you don't want to push that off. So if you're in a long growing season, prune. If you're not, don't. Now, number 7 is pretty simple. It's not staking your plants. Now, in the last mistake, we talked about either pruning or not pruning. So it's either going to make, if you don't prune, you're going to have a tall plant and it's going to get fruit on it and it's going to fall over like the Charlie Brown Christmas tree. If you do prune, you're going to have a shorter, bushier plant, but if one side produces more fruit than the other, it's going to be heavy to that side. So a simple little bamboo stake will work just fine. You don't need anything elaborate. A bamboo stake, tie a couple of the main stems on there, and it's going to take you throughout the season. The 8th mistake is not harvesting your peppers. Now, you might say, who's not going to harvest their peppers? If they've grown their peppers, there's the peppers, pick them off. Well, with big bell peppers, that's sometimes an easy thing to do. Unless you have a lot of plants, they're kind of hiding the peppers under the leaves. You have to dig a little bit. But on plants with little peppers, like shishitos or sweetie drops, pinquitos, you know, little peppers, it's harder to get. And so just like deadheading flowers or picking off green beans as fast as you can, the plant wants to keep producing if it's not being able to produce seeds. So getting those peppers off there tells the plant, you're not done. That guy took your seeds. You got to produce some more fruit so you can make some more seeds. So keep picking so it'll keep producing. Number 9 is not keeping on top of pests and disease. Now, being related, I can say that peppers do not have as many pests and diseases as tomatoes do. So it's a little easier. The biggest thing I get is leaf miner. And that is, you'll see little tracks in your leaves. And it looks like somebody's been tunneling under there. And that's exactly what happens. They tunnel between the both top and bottom outer layers of the leaves. And so most sprays, actually any spray that I know of that's organic, is not going to be able to reach them. They're very ingenious that way. They're very protected. But if you plant some daisy type flowers, zinnias, cosmos, echinacea, anything with that big open center, or things like carrot flower or alyssum, those are going to attract parasitic wasps. Now, these aren't wasps that are going to sting you, but they have an ability to do something amazing. They can find that little larva that's burrowing through that leaf, and they can pierce the leaf right into the larva and lay their eggs inside the larva. And when the eggs hatch, they eat the larva from the inside out and kill that larva for you. Now you can, if you use a magnifying glass, you can sometimes see the larva in there, and then you just pinch real hard at that spot on the leaf. That's a lot more difficult and not as pretty as planting flowers. If you spray neem oil, I'm not against neem oil. It is one of the most organic sprays we have. It does have a tendency, though, to kill beneficial insects along with the bad guys. So I would be very judicious with the spraying, and I would much rather use companion planting like I mentioned. If you want other companion planting ideas, check out my book. I'll leave a link down in the video description. Now, one spray that is phenomenal for all nightshades, and this was probably one of the reasons my main tomato video went viral, is because of the aspirin trick. So you can make a spray solution with aspirin and spray it on any nightshade, peppers, tomatoes, potatoes, and eggplant. And what that does is it mimics a hormone in the plant. It's a hormone that is released when the plant is under attack by pests and disease to rev up its immune system. Aspirin, or the salicylic acid in aspirin, mimics that hormone. And so the plant gets that sprayed on it, and it thinks, whoa, we're under attack, let's pump up the immune system. And if you spray that every 2 weeks, it's going to keep the plant's immune system on high alert, high level, throughout the season, which is going to minimize a lot of disease and pests. Mainly disease, especially disease caused by humid weather. So if you live where it rains during the summer, or if you got high humidity, this is a must. Now you want to use uncoated aspirin, and it's only uncoated because the coating can gum up your sprayer. So that's the only reason that I say uncoated. You can also use aspirin powder, which you can find on Amazon. I'll link some things down below, but you want about 600 milligrams of uncoated aspirin, and you want to blend that up in a little bit of water. Get the aspirin good and mixed in. Pour that solution into about a gallon of water in your sprayer and spray the plants every 2 weeks, the leaves, top and bottom. And that's going to go a long way to help protecting you from pests and especially disease. All right, the last mistake is creating too much work for yourself. Did you know that peppers are perennials? They don't have to die in the fall or winter and have to be replanted again from seed next year. Peppers, like I said, they take a long time from seed to harvest, and you can't put them out until the temperature is a certain degree, right? Mid 50s. So especially in short season climates, that's giving you a problem. However, you can protect them and bring them back again to grow next year. Now, before you say that can't be done, where I live, I have viewers from Canada who have told me that this worked for them. So if you're not up in the Arctic Circle, give it a try. I've got a whole video right here that's going to show you step by step exactly how to do it to save those pepper plants this year to grow again next year and the year after and the year after. I'll see you guys next time.